Hello, can you hear me? Hi, Tomas. Can you hear me, Tomas? Hi, Tomas. Can you hear me? Cool. Okay. So I'm very excited to be here. You know, this time of year, earnings season, it's really difficult. There's a lot happening, and you know, when it comes to investing, there's always a lot of distraction and news and stuff like that. And what's really important is what I'm going to talk about today, hopefully. The remaining focus, and the way I to me it's always like an athlete. You investing is always like an athlete, because it's a game that never stops, right? It's like running all the time over the weekend. Your mind is constantly on it, and it's the preparation that you do throughout, in the kind of low periods between earning seasons, that really kind of you kind of get, like when you're at school, you kind of get your results to see how you're actually doing. Now, that being said, I don't want to lead people astray, and that it's all about the earning seasons. But the earning seasons are so important because that's where the opportunity kind of surfaces. You have to kind of keep yourself focused. So I'm going to talk about what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to kind of explain how I see a path in 2024 to drive the returns of the portfolio by 15%. Obviously, no one knows how the market's going to go, but I'm going to lay out my framework so that you can kind of hold me accountable to it. And like everything that I'm going to say, you take it or leave it. It's up to you. There's nothing that I'm going to say, it's a hard and hard fast rule. At the end of the day, like an athlete, you are on this journey alone, right? Doesn't really, like, it's you, it's your income, it's whatever. But I'm hoping that I'm helping you provide some framework and use my experience. There's some things, some principles that I will talk about that, these are tried and tested. And there are other things that you may say, actually, that doesn't apply to me, whatever. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is how I see the positions in the portfolio. So I'm going to talk about what I call myself. I call myself like an inflection investor. So what does this mean? I'm going to talk about some kind of the importance of not taking large losses. And then I'm going to talk about how I personally try to view my portfolio from a diversification point of view. So I've got 3 topics to go through today. As always, please reach out to me. I'm going to ask this at the end as well. Drop some questions to me, either today at the end of the session or afterwards or whatever. So I'm going to go for 15 minutes where I'm going to talk about these 3 topics. And then I'm going to open it up. And if you want to, you ask some questions about the portfolio, about some kind of stuff that you're thinking about. And if nobody wants to ask any questions, I'll continue. So what I'm trying to do is this, right? When I come to invest in this stock, I'm looking first and foremost to think about the state of the business. I just look at the balance sheet. I've explained that many times in the past. It takes you 5 minutes to look at a balance sheet. But those 5 minutes, oh my God, they're like worth gold. If you start with a business that's all about rhetoric, and there's a lot of this stuff with AI right now, a lot of these Me Too companies, and their balance sheet is not in a great situation, you may see, oh, the share price is going up and up and up, and everyone's kind of getting excited, and there's a lot of momentum in the stock, and the CEO goes on a certain news outlet and kind of talks her or his book, and then results don't match up, and the results are down, let's say 15-20% on the back of those earnings. So the first instinct is your pride is hurt because this is your ego. You put out, this is your creativity. Your portfolio is an echo, a reflection of your personality. And so your ego is hurt, you're down 15%, and the instinct is like, oh, I got to double in because the market doesn't get it. And, rather than just going back to the principles of just spend like a couple of minutes. If the business has a substantial amount of cash, it can carry some debt, but it has a substantial amount of cash. Everything becomes really easy, okay? Like it becomes really, really easy. But if you end up in a situation where you're investing in something because you believe that it's going to have a rosy future, but the balance sheet isn't quite lined up with that, it's going to cause so much difficulty for you. You're going to need a really favorable market to do well. So first thing that I think about is the balance sheet. It takes you 5 minutes. The second thing is, can I legitimately see an increase in profitability in the next 12 months of this business? People will talk all kinds of stuff. And, I actually mentioned this to George in the past, that the purpose of the CEO is to lead all stakeholders into their vision. By that, I mean, you sell your employees on your vision, you sell the investors on your vision. These are very charismatic people. By definition, they've outperformed everyone else by being charismatic. And it's really, really important that you can cut back on that, what they're saying, and think with, with common sense, whether the business is going to be substantially more profitable next year. Do not be a hero. Do not think, because I feel or whatever. Just look how the business has performed over the last 2-3 years. That gives you a strong indication. Now, I recognize that if it's a kind of a younger business, not let's say like Google, we can talk about Google later on today, but like if it's a younger business, they can have quite a bit of increase in profitability over a 12-month period that you may not forecast, but don't forecast that these things are going to go to the sky. So as an inflection investor, you need to marry up two things. You need to marry up a strong increase in profitability for the business, and you need to get invested in businesses where the expectations are not exorbitantly high. So you can have a business that's doing really, really well, and everyone is expecting it to do well. And you may do okay in that business, but you didn't go in with a good risk reward. It's really, really important to think about investing. It's an odds game where you're trying your best to think where the business is going to go. But, in practical terms, what you're doing is when you buy one share of the business is you're making a bet that the share price is going to go up, right? At its core, whether you're Warren Buffett or whatever, that's the bet that you're making is the share price going up. So it's a 50-50 thing. It can go up, it can go down. But what you're trying to do by coming to this webinar, by reading and thinking and being reflective, is you are trying to add a bit of skill to that. Now, the best investors in the world, they're going to be right 60% of the time, okay? These are like the best. Like these are people that get paid a lot of money. Now, what that means, if you invert that, is that 40% of the time, these people are just making losses. They're just taking losses. So what is really important is to add a bit of experience. And for me personally, and I strongly advocate that everyone does this, like when it comes to investing, when you think about your investing journey, have at the forefront of your mind one thing: the losses that you've made. So that's the first thing. Now, the stock market is going up, people don't think about the losses. But if you start to that, like think about, okay, these are the losses that I've made in the past 2-3 years. Start to that. That's level one. Like in our household, we kind of say like elementary, Watson. So start to that. But where you try and gain an advantage is by reflecting in the mistakes that you could have forecast ahead of time so you don't end up in the same situation again. I don't know if anyone has ever played chess, but like when you're playing chess, you kind of like sometimes you end up putting for stupidity your queen in front of your king, and someone comes up to you and like puts a crappy little bishop in the way, and you just got sucker punched into losing your queen. Now, what you're trying to invest in is you're just trying to avoid getting sucker punched. You just don't want to be putting yourself in that position. So if you keep making the same mistake, take a step back, reflect. The bulk of the money that you're going to make as an investor is in avoiding the losses. And the way to think about it is, even if you compound at 5%, provided you keep doing that, you're going to end up with a satisfactory return over time. Everybody wants to get rich quick, but the biggest mistake people make is they have a few good years and a few bad years, and those bad years are just killer. Why are they killer? Obviously, they erode your capital. But what really also happens, which is not immediately reflected in the erosion of the capital, is the mental distress that it causes. And it's really, really important to not to put yourself in that position. You want your portfolio to be aligned, to be congruent with your personality, but you want together to thrive. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're in a difficult period in the market and it's just causing you too much anguish. So I feel that this is something that is really, really important when it comes to investing, is just to try one's best to avoid taking losses. And by that, everyone's going to make those losses. I just said at the start, you're going to have a 40% loss ratio if you are terrific in this game. But if you are just trying your best to reflect so you don't keep making this exactly the same mistake, focus on the balance sheet. Couple of minutes. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to me. A couple of seconds, I can teach you. It's not difficult. I will teach you how to look at this. It doesn't need to be too complicated. Think about a reasonable amount of profitability for the business. And now I'm going to talk about the last topic that I feel that is really, really important that right now in the market. It's about how I feel about diversification. So today I made a new stock pick, Celestica. I don't like making a lot of stock picks in the same period of time, because I know from experience that the market adds a lot of mist in your eyes and leads you astray. And when things are working out, you kind of feel like you got this, and control in the market is a total illusion. And that's why I kind of like to space out. So I've always said to you guys, space out your investment. And I've broken this cardinal rule. I recognize this, and I do think that I have a reasonable excuse on this occasion to do that. And this is about diversification. So I don't want to have all my stocks as being kind of high flying, those kind of like samsara, like, oh, they're jazzy and all this, because I know from my experience that at some point these kind of growthier names will just fizzle. And I don't want to be in that mental distress where my portfolio is melting down. For example, I own this Open Door. I recommend it to everyone at $8, and it's now like at $3. And I saw it go to 80 cents. It is making a comeback, but that caused me so much difficulty in my mind that I'm like, in hindsight, it wasn't worthwhile. I could have just called my losses back, like, I don't remember now, it was like 2020 or whatever. And I didn't have to keep on with this business. So the point I'm making is just like, don't have all the same, let's call them factor type stocks, all the same kind of high growthy names. And something like Celestica, I like because it's kind of like, it's 10 times earnings. It's not expensive. And if the market kind of goes out of favor with these growthier names, which I'm always quite apprehensive about, these kind of more boring names, they should continue and preserve my capital. Similarly, when I can't remember when it was now. I think it was last year at some point. I can't remember now. I don't want to lie. It was around August time or something like that. I recommended Alphabet. Alphabet has worked out reasonably well, but I didn't expect that Alphabet would ever be a key driver of my portfolio. I expected at the onset that it would underperform the rest of the portfolio, but I wasn't. When I talk about diversification, not every position in your portfolio needs to be something that's going to really drive that. And another one that I had just that I sold about a few weeks ago was that one Oki is a dividend stock. I didn't expect it to do well. It wasn't in the cards. I want things in the portfolio that have different types of exposure. So I own these kind of like some of these 2 or 3 large caps, like I would call Palo Alto a large cap. This can be up for discussion if you want, but I feel that having like 2 or 3 larger caps, 2 or 3 kind of like slower growing businesses, it just adds a bit of protection, because at certain point this market is going to go out of favor with tech stocks, and I don't want to be going with that mental distress. So I'm going to kind of open it up for a couple of questions if you guys and girls want to ask anything, either about the portfolio or about like whatever, Celestica or something else you want to talk about. Like, this is your chance if you want to ask a question. Okay. Nobody wants to ask any questions. If you do want to ask a question, just let me know. So when it comes up to this earnings season right now, I personally feel that there's so much news flow, particularly, when the mega caps are reporting. Now, I do have a few mega caps, as I said already, in my portfolio, but I suggest that if you do decide to buy into anything in the next couple of weeks, because earnings season and everything seems to be taking off, I recommend that you dollar cost average, buy something, give it about 6-8 weeks before you buy a little bit more. And the reason is that you don't really know that business very intimately until you've been a shareholder in that business. And I say always about Apple. You can have an Apple phone, Apple products, Apple TV, but until you own some shares of Apple, you don't really know what it feels like to be the owner of that business. And same with PayPal. I recommended this PayPal stock, and it has kind of worked out more or less-ish, kind of was at least working out, let's just rephrase that. But the expectation that I was saying is that, okay, when it comes to investing, I'll give you the example of PayPal just because it's at the top of my mind. A really good way to invest is when you feel like the outlook right now is particularly grim, looking over the next 2 quarters, for example. But after that, the comparables, like the year-over-year comparisons, improve because the business has already started to decelerate previously. So after the next 2 quarters, the comparables start to improve. And why do I feel that is a good way to invest? Is because whenever somebody looks at this type of business, they feel it's dead money. It's like, oh, it's dead money for now. I'll come back in 6 months when the results are slightly better. And that's where you got a good investment, because where you're not competing with anybody. Obviously, you do need, with the passage of time, for those results that you had in your mind to match reality. But I feel that it's really, really important when it comes to investing to think about, do I have the wind to my back or not? And if you can see, like I said the same about like Celestica this morning, if you can see that in about 6 months, even without that much enthusiasm, the comparables start to improve after 6 months. That's really, really interesting, because the market is always looking 6 months ahead. So if you can look 12 months ahead, it kind of gives you a bit more of an edge. It doesn't always work, and things happen, right? But if possible, you want to make it so that it's inevitable that the comparables will improve. And what happens then is when the investor comes into the stock 6 months from now and they see, hey, the revenue growth rates are improving, they see acceleration, and they're like, oh, wow, that looks okay. The business is turning around. And, CEOs like, oh, things are improving, business is better. But it was natural. It was going to happen anyway. And you buy at a lower price, and when the comparables start to improve and the share price is going up, then you get a lot of the momentum investors getting in, and then you built your margin of safety because you bought it when there wasn't a lot of people weren't really excited about that. You paid a depressed valuation just because you were willing to look 12 months out. So that's how I'm trying to think about the upcoming earnings season. If anyone wants to ask any questions, I feel like, there's a few of you on the call today. Maybe you want to ask anything. Well, okay. You'll just have to listen.
Michael, I do have a question.
Yeah.
This is my first time joining the call. I do have a portfolio of stocks. Some of them actually done quite well. Do you have any advice as to when is a good time to sell the stocks that performs really well?
That's the best question. Like, that's the only thing that matters in investing is when you sell, because everything else is just noise, right? It never matters how much you make in the market. It matters how much you keep in the market. Now, I'm going to give you a little anecdote, and then I'm going to tell you what I believe. Okay. So I don't know how closely you follow Charlie Munger, obviously passed away, but Charlie had an interview, I think it was on the Acquirers podcast, about 3 weeks before he died. And in it, the person said something to that effect. How do you know when to sell? And he said, I'm still kind of working on that. So, Charlie was one of the best investors in the world, and, someone that's clearly very reflective, very smart. I believe this can be up for discussion as well. He's actually smarter than Warren Buffett. But he was very much like tongue-in-cheek saying, okay, I'm still working on that. And when it comes, so I can only tell you about my strategy, right? So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the change in investors' expectations, okay? So when I recommend a stock, I am looking for my holding period to be approximately 18 months. Now, that's mine, and I have broken that. I gave you the example at the start about Open Door. I've held that for a long time. I've held Uranium Energy Corp for a while. So I have broken my own rules. But it never matters how with the price that, Mrs. Wang, the price that you bought, and that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is when the investor come in today and they look out, do they see a compelling story? If you yourself feel like, okay, I don't feel like I could really buy into this business, if you couldn't buy into it, don't expect me to buy into it, right? So I try my best when I recommend a stock to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for in the change in the narrative. And when that kind of feel like that's happened, I kind of say, okay, my thesis has worked out, I have been validated, and I exit. Because what you do not want to do is you do not want to hold that business for a year and a half, 2 years. You make some money, and then it fizzles back out, because there's no such thing. And people got confused in the market, like in the decades of the 2010s, there's no such thing as a secular growth stock. there are periods, there are business cycles. Sometimes they're shorter, maybe the last 2 years, like COVID, the work from home stocks did really well in those like short period. And sometimes you have a longer tailwind. Like you look at Microsoft from 2012 till now. So sometimes the cycles are longer, but if you rewind the clock back in Microsoft from 2012 to 1999, you know, that period didn't really work out much. And I could say the same about IBM and Cisco. So there is a cycle. Now, to try and attempt, without knowing your individual stocks, without offering you advice on the stock that you bought, because I don't know your stock, but I would just say, if you yourself look at this and say, okay, I haven't got the conviction to buy now, don't feel that someone else is going to buy for you. And don't say just because, oh, I bought it at a lower price, like it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter, the price that you bought. It matters where it's going. I've tried to answer the question. Have I been able to answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
So everybody have their own rules, but need to have an expectation when you want to have it set, and that'll be it.
No, not so much. So yes and no. So yes, but also you do have to have your own rules, but you need to think about whether you would buy into this stock today if you didn't know the name, if you never knew about this company, and I showed, hey, Mrs. Wang, this is like this stock, ABC. Look at this is the fundamentals, this is what they're doing, these are their prospects, and this is the valuation. If you say, yeah, I feel this is a terrific market, I want to buy. If you felt like that, then keep that holding by all means. But if you felt, oh, you know what, I'm not sure if the prospects are that good now, then perhaps maybe that's not such a good investment to keep holding on to.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else want to ask any questions?
I can, I have a question, but I can just write it to you. It has to do with,
ask. I've got a couple minutes. Ask, please.
real short, just 1 minute answer. Do you ever like to do calls and puts? I've never done it, but I was thinking maybe I should learn about it. Is that something you recommend learning about, or just stay away?
In my experience, I've had a lot of investors come to me over the years, and there seems to be a correlation between the market going up and the risk appetite for people to do those options and stuff like that. These gains make brokers rich. They make brokers terrific amount of money. It doesn't make you as the investor rich. And I've been through this cycle. I've seen how it is. I strongly advise against. I know, and these games are rigged to make them rich. And you don't want to make them rich, man. Like, you want to preserve your wealth. And I really feel like you need to not do that, because they're priced to be 95% expire worthless. So that's how they're priced. Now, if I took you to a casino and you said, okay, you know what? I know that the house is going to win 55% of the time. You'd be like, I don't really want to get involved. Like, I don't want to get involved. But here, it's a 95% chance of loss. Now, I know that there are people that listen to me, and there are people in the subscribers and stuff, the people that do that. They tell me, oh, yeah, I'm doing that. But I really advise against it, because, you know, when the market is doing well, you kind of feel like you that at control. People love to write put options. Oh, I like to collect my income. And bringing it back to basics, if you can compound at 5-10% without the heartache, you're going to live a long, happy life. If you compound at 15%, but through options, man, it's going to blow your mind. I know this one dude, he works at a hedge fund, and terrific returns, man. Like, the guy, like, shares with me, like, he's like on fire, like, for a number of years. Options, this, that, the guy is like, yeah. But I swear to God, he works every single day of the week, including Saturday and Sunday, because I know, because he texts me. And like, he's US based, and I get up early, and anytime I text him, he's on the Bloomberg. Now, yeah, I get it. The returns are great. I get it. But is that really a way to live? I'm not 100% convinced. That being said, I've said the same argument to him, and he doesn't listen to me. So that I don't expect that, you'll need to go on your own journey to realize that for you. But everything that I'm trying to explain about investing is to make it so that you can stay in the game and enjoy the process, grow as a person, grow as an individual, grow in kindness, grow your purchasing power, and align those things so it becomes a pleasurable activity.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Okay, I think that if anyone else has any other questions, like, reach out, please.
Yeah, Michael, one more question. I'm sorry.
Oh
This
yeah,
is my
sorry.
first
Was
time
it
on
you?
the
I was
call.
saying Mrs. Wang, and I kept on reading the wrong name. I do apologize. Sorry, I apologize. That I kept on calling you Mrs. Wang. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I saw your, I joined your group this year. I saw you're advising about 3% per stock. So that would be a portfolio of 30 plus stocks, right? Around 30 stocks.
Mhm.
And I don't think I have that ability to track that much.
Mhm.
But if I follow, let's say, your portfolio, sample portfolio for reference, could you give me a general idea that you feel comfortable to get about 10 to 15% return per year?
So this is a very good question. Thank you for asking it. So I am trying my best to drive home the importance of having equally weighted stocks. Now, for example, last year, I recommended Albemarle, which is like a lithium mining company, and I recommended Antero Resources. And if you had just bought those two, your performance would have been really, really bad. And I was convinced, and I was like pounding my fist on the table, because I believed that those two would do really well. I was like, oh God, and I put like so much capital to work there. And I also, it's better to be lucky than smart. I also had other names in the position in the portfolio that did well for me, and because they were equally weighted, the performance is okay. So I know from my own experience that two things. It's very difficult to track many names. I know that, and I also know from my experience, we fall in love with our best ideas. We fall in love. We do the research, we do the hard work, we like speak to people, and even if it's not working out, we believe in it because it's our work, our intellectual property. So I believe if you, for example, cannot track all the stocks in a portfolio because you haven't got time, etc., put, let's say, for example, I don't know, like 10 or 15% of your portfolio across, let's say, 8 or 10 names of my stocks. Okay. You said, okay, 10-15% of my portfolio, I'm going to put in cross 8 or 10 of Michael's stocks equally weighted. And I genuinely believe I'm working hard to deliver those type of returns. I'm working very hard. And one last thing that I would just say is the vast majority of what I do, what I write, you can ignore. But if I write on the headline trade alert, that means I'm either like recommending that the person sells the stock or recommend the person buys the stock. That's the only time you need to actually do anything. You just need to read when it says that. Because I write a lot, particularly now in earnings season, there's so many emails just flying around. But if I write trade alert, then you need to pay attention. I don't exchange many stocks in my portfolio often. It's quite a static thing. But if I write that, that's the only time you need to kind of pay attention.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If anyone has any other questions, let me know, please. Otherwise, yeah, I'm very grateful that everyone showed up. Thank you so much. real pleasure. And I hope to see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.